Good morning, everybody. Uh, Obviously, some pretty big events happened overnight. Um, at the lows, S&P futures were down 2%. Oil was up 14%. The VIX futures were trading over 21. Um, but things have tampered down as we got close to the open, and now as we sit here, the S&P is down about 0.9%. Q's the same. Dow a little worse. Russell a little worse. VIX up just over 20. Now, I'm sure many of you have questions about what this all means. To answer all of those questions is our own Frank Gregory, of course, graduate of the same university as the Pope. And he's going to break down what happened overnight, what the ramifications are, and what's next.
I mean, that's a weird way to refer to yourself, Mark. Yeah, a busy night to say the least. You had, Israel launch a preemptive strike called Operation Rising Lion. They're always great names for these. And hit 100 sites in Iran, including military bases, missile factories, some uranium enrichment facilities, as well as some bunkers where both nuclear scientists and Revolutionary Guard commanders were hanging out, including the head of the Revolutionary Guard, Hussein Salami. Over 200 aircraft, tons of munitions, covert operations by Mossad. I'm sure this is one that will be studied for a long time in military classrooms. The big thing is initial reports, nuclear infrastructure pretty crippled, military command structure crippled. Reports on the ground say there is no radiation or anything, so that's good news. What they did not touch, they tried to stay away from all populous areas. The people on the ground there are they're not considered enemies, they're not considered combatants. It's just really the regime itself. So they stayed away from most civilian areas. And I think I just saw something come across that Iran is reporting about 78 casualties, 200 injured. They also did not touch any oil infrastructure in Iran. So, that's really, the good news from that standpoint. From a market standpoint, Iran did launch about 100 drones in response. They were all taken down. Not a single one touchdown in Israeli on Israeli land. So that's really it in a nutshell, Mark. It's certainly going to be interesting for the markets. We're waiting to see if Iran, certainly the regime is threatening retaliation. We'll see where that goes. But at the moment, I'm not even sure how they pull together a retaliatory act with their command structure decimated.
So, it's interesting that you use the word a strike instead of a war. Maybe briefly explain why this is a strike and doesn't necessarily balloon into a war. And, is there a scenario where this does, heat up even further?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a pretty good distinction you pulled out, Mark. I consider it a strike because wars require two parties. And, right at the moment, the other side is not really capable of engaging in war. Israel has no intention whatsoever of invading Iran. Israel has no intention of, taking over Iran. So there's no further act on Israel's part except to then counter any, incoming threats. I think Israel and some of, much of the world would like to see the people of Iran emboldened to overthrow the current regime. We'll wait to see if that happens. I'm mixed on that. I would love to see it, but I'm not hopeful it will because, the leaders there are still pretty hardcore. And I think it could be pretty bloody if that's tried by the people, but we'll see. There's some hope. If you look at some of Iran's biggest supporters, the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in both, some Palestinian territory areas as well as Lebanon, have come out and very publicly stated they will not be engaging in military support of Iran. So I think the rhetoric is being toned down. I would not be surprised. There's not a lot of back work going on for to quell those moves. And if you also look, again, these are all preliminary reports, but there were quite a few countries, Middle Eastern countries in particular, that did help take down some of the incoming drones. So I don't think anybody wanted to see a strike on Israel, because then Israel would have retaliated against the retaliation. So hopefully, we're trying, this is a strike. It's calming down. It's not going to escalate into war.
All right. So I know you've got to go.
No, I always have time for you, Mark.
Oh, thank you.
I'm actually driving to DC for I'm going to be with a military think tank tonight. So maybe on Monday we'll have a little bit more info for you.
Oh, I can't wait for that. Yeah. So, where, you had pulled out a bunch of winners and losers. Yesterday, we ran AI, Frank, and had talked about it kind of spit out if things escalated, who would be the winners and the losers, yeah. And gave us, precious metals, oil, energy, defense, aerospace, cybersecurity. And it said likely losers were like the airlines and risk assets. And then it actually gave a volatility hedge, which is really funny. Looking at this, there's definitely some winners and losers in the defense space.
Yeah.
Who do you think is positioned here to really come out here looking really, really good? And who do you see as potentially maybe not looking so shiny out of this?
Well, I think on the defense side, you've got some companies that are specializing in counter drone systems. And when you watch 100 incoming drones, Israel went 100-0 on taking down those drones. I think some of the counter systems, their Iron Dome is, a wonderful system. Raytheon, by the way, makes heavily involved in the missiles that go into the Iron Dome. So that could be if you look at the big defense stocks, that could be one to keep an eye on. They just shot a lot of missiles. They're going to have to replenish them. So that could be one. I think all of your drones, the drone market is still having a huge bump from the Ukrainian strike on Russia, because that one was wildly successful. And so when you start looking at some of the smaller, more tactical drones, keep in mind, the Iranian drones, there was nothing sneaky about them. They went up in the air and they flew, they might as well have been just trying to shoot, flying planes into Israel at that point. So there was nothing really sneaky about it. So I think, still a lot of your small drone companies on the offensive side, KTOS, Kratos, we really like. That's been a good one. Red Cat, we're still hanging on. I'm not, I have a lot of mixed feelings about that stock. But it's volatile, so it's fun to trade. But I think, KTOS is a good one to keep your eye on. And, certainly Air Environment, is always a, one for the tactical offensive drone side that does very well. On the flip side, the counter UAS, I think you're going to look at a lot of your bigger defense companies, BAE Systems, and the Lockheeds and the Raytheons of the world that do these big counter drone defense systems. But boy, Israel really took care of business. I hate to sound flippant about it, but it's just a fact. They did, and it's going to boost the defense stocks. From where I sit, I think the defense stocks are going to get a boost. Airlines, I think are going to be down a little bit. Travel across the Middle East is probably going to be on hold, and that's going to leak into I would think Turkey and other parts of Europe. So that's going to be hurting the airline stocks, and certainly the tragedy that happened in India yesterday as well is not going to do much for the airline industry there. So I would think airline stocks are down. Oil, I always miss the call on oil, so I'm not even going to try and prognosticate on that.
Yeah.
You do pretty well with that, Mark. I'm just that's not I long term maybe, but boy, these short term moves, I always seem to get oil wrong.
Yeah. Well, oil's definitely moving today, and an interesting piece is that the overnight initially the bond market popped, and then as the bond market yields started to kind of creep back up again, it's because oil being up so much is obviously inflationary,
Right.
and and so that's why we have the bond market down a little bit today, even as the stock market's down about 1%. But another thing to think about is that we had such a huge rally. This is obviously a this gives a lot of people that maybe want to take some money off the table an excuse to sell, and that's part of the reason why you see that kind of movement. So Frank, looking at the winners and losers today, if we want to look at my screen,
I'm gonna put on my glasses for that, Mark, so I can see.
yeah, XLE is having a day, but it is off the highs, and with that big pop higher, and now you telling us, hey, they didn't hit any oil areas in Iran.
Nope.
Is this initial pop that we are getting today? Does that really make a lot of sense? So with XLE back up at $88, I think it might be a fade. How do you feel about oil prices going forward? Over the next week or two.
What is the actual? Do we know the Brent crude price?
Here. I can give you light sweet is 72.76, up $4.72, called 7%.
I mean, look, the Saudi, I think, the Saudis and other folks want that, they want that oil up in that 85 plus range, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd be curious, to see how the futures market looks. I would think it's probably, positive, right? I think oil could pop from here. I don't think it's going to go down much more. There's really no fundamental reason why in my mind.
Okay.
I don't know. But again, I'm not,
I know.
A lot of that's going to depend, particularly if, if we're not seeing oil disruption, we're not going to see, Saudi, I mean, there were some rumors that Iran might start a fight with Saudi Arabia for some reason. I don't know why they would want to, how that would benefit them in any way, shape, or form. But if all that starts, measuring out, then there's really not going to be a hit on that oil market.
Yeah. So your expectations is that this is likely to de-escalate.
Iran's got to do something, right? But
mm-hmm.
But I think the current action, there's no way there's going to be a de-escalation in the sense that Iran has been crippled from reacting. So are they going to react? Yes. The question is when and to what extent. Do they do it more on the ground from, attempt, I mean, I'm sure Israel's on high alert for terrorist activity. Do they, is that how they're going to try and influence this? Hezbollah and the Houthis can say anything they want, but what they actually do, is a very different thing. So, but I think from a standpoint of an attack and a war, is there de-escalation? Yes. The U.S. is pushing very hard to get Iran to come to the table for a nuclear arms deal. At this point, if your nuclear facilities have been decimated, why would you not say, "Oh, great, we'll enter in a nuclear arms deal"? I mean, there's really no reason not to.
So that's a pretty good base case for de-escalation. So we've had a nice little run in oil. This would be a spot where I'd be looking to maybe take a little bit of, if I was long already, taking some off the table. I'm not inclined to jump in and go longer here. But, you're right. It's at that kind of an inflection point here of what the next few events occur, sitting at its 200-day moving average for first time in forever as well, which is interesting. And you mentioned KTOS. Let's look at that one. Nice trading range today.
Yeah.
High of the day, 43. Low of the day, 40 and a half. Pretty pretty nice range. It's had a really nice run over the last few months. This was one that you guys had in capital gains, and is capital gains still long this long
You know,
Kratos?
good question. I know that Andrew was doing some trades this morning. I got to take a look at our current position. I don't think so. We had a pretty good move in it, so we had. I think we're out of it at this point, but it's one that's on our trading list because it does. Like a lot of these stocks, it still moves up and down, and we get some nice play out of it. It's always going to be on news. We got a good pop with the Ukrainian strike on Russia, so it is it's one of our little favorites. And if you start looking at the AI aspect, Mark, this is tying into your themes on how, the importance and growth of AI. This is a drone stock that is heavy AI oriented. So if people don't know what they do, their primary KTOS is building pilotless planes, pilotless wingmen. Now, there's been a few of those where it's just kind of a decoy, drone plane that flies with a piloted aircraft, but they're actually working towards this will literally be I forget the movie from the 90s, where you got this rogue AI plane. I forgot the name of it, but that's what they're building. They're building a plane that will actively engage in combat alongside a piloted aircraft and make independent AI based decisions when engaging other fighters and stuff.
Oh
Pretty
my!
wild. So and they've tested it. They've landed and taken off from aircraft carriers. So it's pretty cool stuff.
All right, and then other defense names that you had thrown out were AVAV. Another one with a nice range, currently up about $3.
Yep.
This has been you pointed this one out, I want to say 2 years ago, when this was like a $50 stock or something like that, and this one has run to $200. So hats off to you on that one.
Yeah, that was. I had actually taken. I'd had a tour. They've got a facility they call McCready Works. A guy named McCready started Air Environment back in the 70s, and their McCready Works is basically a skunk works division where they do high tech development. And I had a tour there a couple of years ago, and saw what they were doing. Was pretty impressed.
So there you have it. Now, you mentioned losers. Now, obviously, from a U.S. base, United and American are both pretty darn big in Asia, and you can see United Airlines is really taking it on the chin here, down about 4%. American down over 5%. So the travel and leisure stocks are not are taking some pain. Is this and really had been in a spot of weakness, had a nice little rally here, but now we're right back to the 50-day moving average. Is this a kind of a time to look at maybe going long these airlines, or do you see some more? How long do you think things are going to be difficult for travel in the Middle East and in India?
Well, I mean, India and I've been trying. I was reading this morning. I was trying to get some indication of how they do their airline crash investigations. One of the big things is, in the U.S., God forbid there's any type of incident like that. There's an immediate investigation. The reasons behind it are very quickly determined. So if for instance, if there's some issue with a line of planes themselves, the FAA will very quickly move to ground and and protect the public. I don't know how that plays out in India. So I was trying to get some insight this morning, and I just can't find anything that gives me that answer. So I would think it's going to drag on a little bit longer than what we would be used to here. But the realities of the world are the realities of the world. People need to travel. People need to get out and move. People need to, move around the world. And I'm always a little, maybe it's naive, but I'm always a little bullish on travel and leisure stocks moving into the summer season.
No, that's a thing. So Frank, I want to talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing across services, how when we get kind of a volatility spike and a market scare, what do our services do? And this is why diversification of trading is so important. So in Delta Strike, where I'm leaned a little bit long, I do have a couple of puts in my pocket in some other names that I'm looking to harvest profits in today in our special situations that we've built. There's typically one service that is going to benefit from one trade or a special situation that's really going to benefit from this type of event. In this case, I was selling calls in ExxonMobil because Exxon's having a nice pop with the RIP zone. This is kind of plays right into RIP zone's hands because of its ability to trade in it.
Mark, you're frozen, my friend. You froze up a little bit there.
I did.
Yeah, you look cute though. It wasn't a bad freeze. You look good on it, but you did freeze for a second. And I think you're frozen again.
Yeah, I don't know what is going on here. Thanks, AT&T. 1 second. Let me see if I can figure out if there's anything up. Nothing. So, all right. So where did I cut off?
I would go back 30 seconds and start over.
All right. Yeah, I mean, UAL and AAL, down pretty big. If travel does pick up, and you're right, summer season tends to be heavier travel, then there could be an opportunity here to at least short term go along. A long-term buy and hold on an airline is never anything I would suggest because, the old joke is, how to turn how to become $100 millionaire or how to have $100 million. Start with $1 billion and buy an airline.
We've all done it, Mark. We've all done it.
Yes. So each service is kind of is typically in a position to either take advantage of this type of move or in that it creates opportunity for a new trade, something as in zero DTE, right? One of the beautiful things about zero DTE is that going into that day, you never have a position. So coming in this, almost never. Sometimes I'll do it overnight, but rarely do we have a position. So today in zero DTE, I have nothing on and I can do whatever I want. If I think if we see the trend of the market starting to recover here, because I would note the market has taken it during the open, while market's been open, extremely rational. But in zero DTE, I can set up a trade for today and it's gone by the end of the day. Come in tomorrow, we get some other crazy news. I don't have a position. I can do whatever I want. And obviously capital gains, one of the things that I love about capital gains because of your information infrastructure that you have, Frank, is you guys are prepared for this type of stuff well before people, the rumors are hitting the overall market. There's like the Frank's kind of like your indicator that the VIX is going to start going up when he starts talking about specific events. But that's one of the beauties of capital gains is you guys are ahead of a lot of this news, and you guys are making money
I
today.
also have one of the best options traders on the planet on my team, Mark. So
It does help that you've got Andrew working with you, but that combination of an incredible option trader and kind of your insider and not insider but insider knowledge on a lot of the what's going on in government puts you guys ahead of the curve, and that's why your guys' track record has been so phenomenal.
we love sifting through rumors.
Yeah,
It's the
and you
best,
guys,
you make some good trades on rumors.
yes, and you guys like making money on events on events because you guys, we were talking about KTOS. You closed KTOS today, 63% win. So, yeah,
I'll
closing
take
that
it.
pretty nice.
Yeah.
The Exxon trade in special situations was a 50% winner, and I haven't had a chance to go through every service to see what the closes look like, but so far I'm seeing a lot of green closes.
I think we had a rare earth mining trade. I think up almost 100%. If memory serves.
Yes. You was that you MP or USAR? You guys were.
No, that was MP. USAR, we've had a hard time. The base stock is fun because it's super volatile, but we've been having a hard time getting some options activity, and it's still new, and the options activity is growing. In fact, we tried to put one in yesterday and couldn't fill it. So, but the stock itself, I mean, we had bought some of that long down in the 850 range and had a pretty good run up. I think it's ticking around 13 at the moment. So, that was a fun one. But MP, we had a really good options trade in that.
Yeah. So it's like I said, as I've been going through the trades here, the services that I'm looking at are mostly closing winners. Leisha's got a really nice gold trade that she did yesterday into this. Excellent.
Smart.
And that's an
That
option
was a
shopper.
smart trade.
Yeah, she went and she's gonna be, I would imagine, taking some money in that one today as well. Really nice that kind of across the board. If you're a member of multiple services, you're probably coming out ahead here by a good margin. So we've got a couple minutes, and I know you've got to head to Washington D.C. Does anybody have any questions that we can answer for you guys really quick? Looking to see. All right. I don't see a lot of any specific questions for you, Frank. I want to thank you for carving out a little time here this morning after the event. Again, we're not happy these things are happening, but they do create an opportunity. And with markets like this, there is an opportunity today, and don't be afraid to take that opportunity when it comes. Andrew is going to be talking about Flash 5 this afternoon. He's going to be issuing his first 2 stocks and potentially doing a trade. The market being down 70 points, that's an opportunity for him because he can now go along with the market significantly, meaningfully lower this morning. So there is opportunity. So Frank, I hope you have a great weekend. Safe travels.
Thank you, sir.
And we cannot wait to hear what information you bring back from your your think tank in Washington D.C.?
I can't wait to tell you. So,
All right. So we'll get him early next week, Monday or Tuesday, to come on and give us an update, folks. So make sure you're continuing to join us here in our State of the Market, because we're here to guide you day by day as events happen in real time. So Frank, yet again, thank you.
thank you.
Folks. I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I obviously hope this does not escalate any further. I am Mark Sebastian. I am your only option. Have a good one.